You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. Now, who is going up next? I am going to get to some of your emails, by the way, because I know some of you will be getting tetchy. I will get to some after the next break. But who wants to go next?
I'll do it, Darren.
Oh, bravery, bravery, bravery.
Right, 4 million pensioners, widows, divorcees and others living alone could be hit hard by a council tax raid. Now, Angela Rayner has refused to rule out stopping the council tax discount for single-person occupancy. Our pensioners make up half of those claiming this discount, and over 34% of our country will be affected by this. This will mean that 4 million pensioners who have already been hit hard by losing the winter fuel allowance face a bitterly cold winter. Now, I ask, how can Labour continue their financial assault on the British people? They're bringing through policies that were not in their manifesto. They've clearly conned the electorate, Darren.
What would you say then to Sir Keir Starmer, who would turn round to you and say, well, Andrea, your lot left us with a £22 billion black hole?
But did you see the recent interview today and analysis that something like 9 billion of it is due to the public sector pay rises?
Yeah, that is 11 billion quid for climate change aid.
Oh, absolutely.
And let's not forget the 28 billion for the gold-plated civil service pensions, Keir Starmer's best mates.
Yeah.
It seems like a complete stitch-up, doesn't it?
Well, on one of our viewers, Anne, has written in, and Anne says, Darren, the removal of council tax discount also affects single parents, not just
completely. Exactly.
who work but have universal credit top-up because they are low paid. They don't get council tax paid for unless they're on full benefit. You should come over on a dinghy pet. This means that the move affects women disproportionately, whether it's older widows or single parents. And as some of the affected are working which breaks Labour's promise of not taxing the working.
Of course it does.
It's age discrimination, sex discrimination, and breaking manifesto promises. Not a good look for Cruella Reeves.
Oh, that's a new one.
Words.
We talked about the winter fuel allowance thing last week, and as I said at the time, I am very much in favour of mean testing that. We were giving lots of money to rich pensioners who didn't need it. On the single-person council tax discount, I am not in favour of making changes there. I think there are very good reasons why single people pay less in their council tax. That seems to me very obvious. We need to find the money elsewhere. But where we do need to make changes is with council tax itself. We need to blow it up completely and start again. This is a system where your council tax band is determined by the value of your house in April 1991. That's 4 months before I was born. It's a mad, mad system, and Labour should look at it.
Right.
And if that means that some people are going to have to pay more council tax and some people are going to pay less, so be it. We need to relook at it.
Yeah, we do. You're absolutely right. We do need to look at it because council tax should have nothing to do with the value of your house, which depends on where it is in the country. What it should be to do with is how many people live in that house who are of working age. Why should someone in a 2-bedroom house where they're a single parent with a child under 5 or whatever it is, living next door to the same 2-bedroom house that has got 4 working adults in it, pay the same for local services? Those people are using more schools, they're using more roads, they're using more bins. It should be per person. That was also known as the poll tax, which was actually quite a good idea, but everybody wanted to blow that up. It absolutely shouldn't be connected to our house, and we are going to affect so many people with their broken promises. Pensioners, young people, people who live on their own, people who inherited their house or bought it 45 years ago. So if they change the system now to still be attached to the value of the house, which is the suggestion, those people who are asset rich and cash poor are not going to be able to pay.
But at a point when people are struggling anyway. All these decisions that Labour are making recently, when people are struggling.
But why are so many people?
How are they on the side of the people?
But why are so many people struggling? It's because the last government crashed the economy into the ditch.
Really?
And even if you, let's not even talk about Liz Truss because no one wants to, but if you look at the last 14 years and actually slightly before that, we've had no economic.
What about a global pandemic?
COVID, which happened in 2020. What about the 10 years? What about the decade before that, where there was no economic growth?
Andy, you can't argue that Labour inherited a bad economy.
Yes, you can.
The fastest growing economy in the G7. I mean, look at the state that Labour left the country. The Tories inherited it. come on, we have to be realistic here. The problem that I've got, Andy, is that these feel like very political decisions. The money is available in government if they want to protect winter fuel payments for pensioners, which I think Age UK have got over 500,000 petitions signed for, and actually an incredible amount of people.
Age UK have also said in the past they're in favour of scrapping means, of bringing in means testing for that, and I think they're right.
But the point is that these are political decisions that Starmer is taking.
Yes, they are.
He has betrayed his voters because he never put this in his manifesto. We have to hold him accountable
And
to
in the
that.
past,
You'd
he
be
has
saying the same
defended
if the Tories put things that weren't in their manifesto into government, into legislation, or did things like you'd be calling them out for it. And we need to call out Starmer and Rachel Thieves for exactly the same reason.
Rachel Thieves. Look, politics is about priorities, and Labour's making a decision, and not everyone's. I appreciate not everyone watching this is going to like it, but Labour's making a decision that actually pensioners, for example, and I'm not talking about the poorest pensioners. I'm talking about the majority of pensioners. Actually, they've had a really nice, easy ride over the last 15 years. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Working people. Some of them, yes. Some of them are, but not all of them are.
You must have some of the least well paid in the whole of the OECD.
Yeah. Let me put it another way. If I said to you, the top 20% wealthiest pensioners, should we take away their wind fuel allowance? Would you agree?
I don't think I do, actually. I think everyone should be treated equally.
That's free. But that's not treating everyone equally. That's giving free money to rich people. Why would you do that?
Because the problem with the way that Labour is doing it is there are actually people who are on the breadline and their cost of living is high. Not necessarily blaming Labour for that, because the Tories have a lot to answer for on the cost of living as well. But you have to make a point and say, right, the Carol Vorderman interview is a perfect one, where that poor woman called in and said, actually, me and my other half are both disabled, living in this house, and we're going to lose our winter fuel payments, and we can't even get out of bed. Right?
But hang on.
Realistic. There are poor people who are going to suffer.
Well,
and there will be people who will die. She would. And there will be people who die this winter. There will be people who die this winter, and they will be on Keir Starmer and Rachel Thieves'
But I think there's a bigger point as well. These wealthy pensioners that you're talking about, let's talk about the ones at the very top. They're the ones that have paid the most tax into the system.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
But Labour always come in and they punish those who've worked hard and do the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but politics has to be about priorities. We have a finite amount of. We have a finite amount of cash available, and Labour is making choices about where to apportion that cash. And I think broadly they're making the right choices.
I might agree with you on that, on saying, look, let's make it fair for everyone, let's get rid of it altogether. Right, fine. I'll tell you what then, stop Ed Miliband putting 150 quid on everyone's energy bills, which is going to disproportionately hit least
that is not what's happening with G. No, it's not.
He has accepted subsidies, contracts with massive subsidies attached to them in order to get through these green deals for these great whopping wind farms.
GB Energy is all about an amount of upfront... No, it's not. It's about an amount of upfront investment that is going to provoke much more private sector investment. So it's a short-term upfront investment that will... We have to invest. One of the problems with...
It's global grandstanding. That's what it is.
It's not.
Global grandstanding.
One of the problems that we have in this economy, and the reason we haven't grown for such a long time, is because we've not been prepared to invest to grow. And we have to do that. We absolutely do. And if we don't, we're going to be completely screwed, even more screwed than we are now. We should be investing in infrastructure. We should be investing in the green technology of the future. And we should be thinking smartly about...
people in our country, and it shouldn't come across the pensioners.
And our grandparents should be warm. To be honest,
I completely agree with you, and that's yes, they are.
How are they going to keep warm?
Should they not be?
It's going to be means tested. Sorry,
do you not agree that it's wrong to prioritise train drivers who already were above the national average, way above, over pensioners?
I'm not in favour of train drivers getting pay rises like they did now.
Okay. The government have set out plans to abolish the 92 remaining seats for hereditary peers in the House of Lords. The plan was one of Labour's manifesto promises in the election campaign, as they aim to complete reforms brought in by the last Labour government. I won't mention his name, I know how angry you get. So should hereditary peers be scrapped? Or is this an assault on British tradition which paves the way for more reform to come? Dame Andrea Jenkyns and Andy Williams are going to battle this one out. Seconds out, my friends. Ding, ding. It's round one. Take it away, Andrea.
Thank you, Darren. Darren, I love our country, I love our traditions, but we've seen how Labour want to rewrite our history. We've seen trigger notices on our literature, and I think removing hereditary peers, we are one step closer to removing our monarchy. Now, let's not forget that Starmer once said he wants to abolish a monarchy, and the hereditary peers actually provide a necessary counterbalance to a highly politicised patronage system in the House of Lords. They also exist to provide checks and balances and prevent abuses of power. So I think they're an essential part of our constitution, and I think it's wrong of Labour.
Hereditary peers are an anachronism that should have been disposed with decades ago. Tony Blair and the Labour government in 1997 got rid of the vast majority of them. They got rid of about 700 of the 800 that there were then. There are 92 left. By the way, every single one of them is a white man, and I think that's a problem because I do think that's a problem. Why should they all be men? Why? And I really, really do think it's not a meritocracy if all 92 of them. I mean, that's just ludicrous to think that in a meritocracy, 92 out of 92 would be men. Do you really think a meritocracy? No, but a meritocracy would not produce that situation. You know that because the House of Commons is much more representative these days. What we have is a system where, let's say all 92 hereditary peers today were absolutely superb at their jobs, and I know that some of them do brilliant work. Let's say that tomorrow they all die and all of their children replace them. They could be rubbish, not take the job seriously. It is totally ludicrous to have a system where almost 100 people in our second chamber of Parliament are there purely by virtue of their birth. That is not a meritocracy. So if you believe in meritocracy, you cannot have this system.
This is about Labour hating our traditions and trying to abolish all of our traditions. We've seen it time and time again in even Labour-run councils. They don't even want to talk about Christmas anymore. And so I think we are seriously one step closer to losing our monarchy. And I think this is far broader. If we let this happen, it's a slippery slope.
No, if you look at what Labour think about... There are a handful of Labour MPs on the hard left of the Labour Party. By the way, none of them are in government. None of them hold ministerial positions. There are people on the hard left who do think that. Jeremy Corbyn was one of them. There's a reason he didn't win a general election and was deeply unpopular with most people. Keir Starmer's instincts, and I know he's made comments in the past when he was in his 20s about the monarchy, his instincts are not to touch the monarchy. Keir Starmer on these sorts of issues actually is quite conservative. He really is.
He is Flop Starmer. How can you trust what he says?
All right, OK. There's a lot of comments coming through about the House of Lords, none of them especially positive. And I think, to be honest, I'm in that position as well, because I tell you what, here's a hypothetical for you. In the not-too-distant future, the House of Lords will be voting on a piece of legislation passed by Sir Keir Starmer, and that is the removal of the winter fuel payment on the budget for pensioners. Meanwhile, the pensioners within the House of Lords, they get the central heating, they get their subsidised meals, they get a whole host of things, 300 quid a day for turning up there, and they're going to vote to get rid of the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. Of course they will.
Well,
Labour
I don't
patsies, they're all in there because they're cronies. They'll get every little crumb they...
There's more Conservative peers than Labour peers.
There are,
yes,
but there are a lot of Conservatives. I'm reliably told that may not happen when it goes to the House of Lords. I really am. But look, I was with you, I said this to you, and I thought we should abolish a lot of them, get rid of them. But actually, I was convinced that they're a good way, not necessarily the hereditary side of things, and we could perhaps make those life peers. But that 300 quid a day they don't get anywhere to live. They have to travel down, they don't have houses here. They have to then find somewhere to stay. So it's actually just paying for that. They don't get a salary, so there's no pensions, there's no other perks that you would get if you had an elected House of Lords. They actually do oppose the government quite often, which is why the Tories couldn't get their plans through so often. Absolutely. So they're quite a good check and balance to the House of Lords.
Well,
if they're elected...
Renee, you know what they checked and balanced? The will of the British people in their vote for Brexit. They did all they could to frustrate that vote. So I think that is a sign that they are completely removed from the public, that they are there to serve.
Well, perhaps if the bishops weren't there, they may not be so removed.
No, I'd rather keep the bishops than the Labour peers.
The thing about hereditary peers, right, is that they are some of the hardest working peers in the House of Lords. In fact, most of them do show up. That is compared to many, many lords. Alan Sugar, I'm going to call him out, who does not show up.
But then he doesn't get paid.
No, true, but he is still a lord. And he's included in this figure that the government want to get down. You could suggest we get it down to 650 lords, and then you could have 2 out, 1 in. There's better ways to do this than to just say, OK, tomorrow we're going to get rid of all these hereditary peers. I'd also note that Labour are going to put in a rule that says once you hit 80, you're out of the Lords.
Well, that's going to be challenged legally as discrimination, and it won't happen.
Let's see. But that would then put Dame Hodge and Dame Beckett out of a job who've just got in, who are both 79 and 81, right? So we've got to have some common sense when we're talking about...
He said he was going to... Yeah, of course, he said he was going to ban them,
He did, and they've just been put in, and they might make very good Lords for Labour, right? So we've got to have some really sensible conversations about what the Lords is, what we want. I don't think we've had an actual conversation in Britain about what we want out of the Lords. It's very old, and it does need a little bit of reform, but I think just to get rid of these hereditary peers who work harder than people who don't...
I'd rather have the hereditary peers there than I would cronies for political parties.
Me too, yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, as well, if that goes to a voted House, the problem with that is people, A, are lazy and probably won't go out and vote, and second, they'll vote along party lines. So you'll end up with a Labour majority in the House of Parliament and then a Labour majority in the House of Lords, and there's no checks and balances. It just will be pointless.
That's why we need hereditary peers.
Yeah.
You know, well, I'm opposed to the House of Lords until they put me in it.